Selling an RPG Maker game is hard. I mean, not in the sense that getting it onto a distribution platform is hard, but it is hard to make your game stand out. Unless it has sexy hentai ladies. Oftentimes, potential customers will take one look at your project, see it was made in RPG Maker, and just not look any further. So, how do you make your project stand out so that it can be a commercial success? Well, today I'll go over my philosophy on just that, and hopefully from this video you'll be able to make a profit selling your game, and be on the road to achieving your game dev dreams. And yes, I do think you can make a commercially successful RPG Maker game. It's just a tad bit harder than in other engines. Also, throughout this video we shall be joined by the omniscient Steel from Studio Blue, who shall comment on everything I say and make me seem smarter than I really am.
Hey there, Toasty, it's Steel. You're smart.
Subscribe to Toasty.
Thank you, Steel. Very cool. You cannot make a game that will sell with the default RPG Maker graphics. Now wait, let me explain. I know that's a very big statement, and I know many people will disagree, and I'm also willing to admit that there are exceptions to this statement. So, before you all mass unsub, let me make this distinction. You can make a good game with the default graphics given to you with the engine. However, you cannot make a game that will stand out when you're trying to sell it. Does that mean the game won't sell? No, not necessarily. However, consider this. On Steam and many other distribution platforms, potential customers tend to only look at the visuals you present to them, the screenshots or trailer, and maybe the short description or tagline you've given too. Graphics are a massive factor in grabbing people's initial interest, and there are so many games on Steam or itch.io or GameJolt that use the default RTP. The people are tired of seeing the exact same art over and over again. There are plenty of things you can do with the RTP to make it look good. However, regardless of this, the game just still won't stand out. These methods to improve the RTP and make it look better have been done 100 times over, and we've gotten to a point where almost any form of the RTP is instantly recognizable and instantly disliked, because it's become almost as bad as just stock graphics at this point. For the most part, if you make a game with the RTP, most of the people who will buy your game will be RPG Maker developers. That's fine, but it isn't really a success. Basically, all I'm saying is that first impressions are everything. You've got to hook any and all potential customers immediately, and the RTP just won't do that. Even using an asset pack is better, though Time Fantasy is also incredibly overused. Now, it isn't that the RTP or Time Fantasy pack look bad. Visually, I think they're completely fine. They just aren't unique anymore, and they just don't stand out. If you need to use an asset pack, find a more obscure one, or modify one in some way. You don't have to be amazing at art to make small edits to existing work, as long as doing so is allowed for that pack. But realistically, if you slow down for a moment and do the research, see the RPG Maker games that sell and stop brushing away reality, you'll see that really you just have to commission custom artwork if you can't draw. At least if you want your game to be a commercial success, that is. Like I said before, you can make a good game with the RTP, and it's possible if you make your game amazing enough in other areas it will sell. But realistically, you'll end up just being another RPG Maker developer with just another RPG Maker project in the eyes of the general public. Also, as a final footnote, make sure to pay extra attention to your title screen. If you're going to use RTP, at least create a custom title screen. The title screen is the very first thing the player will see when they load up your game. The side splash screens, make those pretty too. And like I said before, first impressions are everything to keeping a player's initial interest. Past that initial first impressions, graphics generally won't carry a game, though they can in some cases. But graphics are important, and don't let anyone tell you they aren't. If your title screen looks like this, say bye-bye to that purchase, because your game is getting refunded.
Hello everyone, this is Steel from Studio Blue, and I want to add on to what Toasty says about graphics. Style is of the utmost importance, and you need to make sure that your graphical style is consistent the entire time. Don't mix and match tile sets and character sets that aren't from similar packs, and don't have those default chibi MV hero side battlers. Don't have those fighting against full-size humanoid enemies. And please don't use hand-drawn graphics unless everything else is the same thing. Consistency is key.
In addition to all the info I had in part 1 about first impressions in regards to a game's graphics, I'd like to now add some additional and more in-depth thoughts about game design onto that. Consider this. Design your first level last. Now let me explain. If you design your game backwards, then by the time you've reached the start, you'll have learned a ton of tips and tricks or quirks about your game and its world that will ensure the player has a good first 30 minutes to an hour, which will secure those good first impressions. You could also just design your game start to finish. However, if you do it this way like I do because I'm a dumbass, you'll look back on the first portion of your game and go, I can do this so much better now. And thus the endless cycle of remakes begins. Actually, to go on a bit of a tangent, I really want to stress how important it is to avoid doing too many remakes and getting stuck in development hell. While redoing portions of your game, either because you've improved yourself as a developer or from hearing player feedback is important, it's also important to actually release your game at some point. Your game can't sell if you just keep remaking it over and over and never take the plunge to just release it. Eventually you have to just be confident in yourself and just release your game. It may not be perfect, but it never really will be, and it's important to recognize how far you've come and how much you've achieved. Eventually you just have to be satisfied and then move on to your next project. Also, to move on to my next rant, language is super duper ultra supreme important. I've touched on this before in other videos, but typos, poor grammar, characters with no personality, unfitting or bad jokes, and more are the biggest killers of your average RPG Maker game. Believe it or not, people really do pay attention to grammar and spelling. While the average player may not pick up on some subtle symbolism or writing with deeper meaning, they will absolutely pick up on poor spelling and grammar. If English isn't your first language, you absolutely must get someone to proofread your game's script or hire a professional editor. That's non-negotiable if you're trying to sell your game. If English is your first language, then write your dialogue like it is. Playtest the heck out of your game and pay attention to the spelling. Trust me, it's really important.
Hey everyone, Steele from Studio Blue again, and I'm going to add on to what Toasty said about first impressions. I cannot stress this enough. You have 10 minutes or less to hook your player. It doesn't matter how good your game gets. If you haven't done something to grab their attention within that time, you've lost them.
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
I mean, think about it. Are you going to message each and every player and tell them how the game gets better in just a few more minutes? Of course not. Hook your player, 10 minutes or less, that's all you get.
I cannot stress enough how incredibly important sound design is in video games. To clarify, when I say sound design, I don't mean the music of a game. Though music is important, I feel like most every developer knows this and makes use of it. However, not every developer I've seen has paid enough attention to their game's sound effects as they should. Sound effects sell the reality of a scene. Even if a scene is completely fantasy and could never happen in the real world, you can make it feel grounded and real within that fantasy world with proper use of sound design. Make your world come alive, have doors creak open in that old abandoned building, have the soft sounds of nature flow through the forest, and have the sounds of your character's footsteps change depending on what they're walking on. All of these things and more will bring your world to life. And while using music in addition to them is important too, using only music makes a game feel incredibly flat. A lot of RPG Maker developers do not pay attention to sound design, and I have seen almost no trailers at all include sound effects in them. Sound effects are how a player interacts with and connects with your world, so when you don't include them in your game, how could a player possibly get invested? They will lose an integral part of the connection to your game's world, and if you don't include sound effects in your trailer, oftentimes even that seemingly insignificant detail will lose a potential customer. You have to craft an entire world here. If there's no sound design, then what's to stop the player from simply muting the game and playing their own music over top? Not focusing enough on sound design is a massive oversight, and if you want your game to stand out, make your sound design great. Even if your story is bad, noises can go a long way in drawing a player in. Noises also happen to be the second biggest thing a player notices in a trailer, and thus are very important to that first impression. Basically, don't brush sound design under the rug. If you want a more in-depth look at sound design, click the link above. That's all.
Steele here again. Let's add on to what Toasty says about sound design. Now, everything Toasty said here and more. In 2D games where lighting isn't viable, sound is vitally important. Music, ambient sounds, and sound effects are characters in and unto themselves. Here's a good way to handle it. When going through the finalized version of your map, get a piece of paper and write down a list of anything present in your level that would make noise in real life. Then add a sound to it. Water pipe, ambient sound. Wooden floorboards, terrain sound. Fire in a steel barrel, proximity sound. Then turn off your music and play your map. It should, well, sound alive.
Ah yes, good helpful advice, Toasty. Woohoo, put in effort? Yay, I make a good game now. Okay, wait, I can explain. Put in effort. By effort, I mean take the time to do more than just what the core RPG Maker engine offers you. I'm not saying go download every plugin in existence. In reality, you really only need around 20 to 30 plugins to make a complete game. However, I am saying take time to develop mechanics further than what comes in the engine. Use the default battle system if it fits your game. That's fine. It won't really stand out as it comes, but the default battle system can be done in interesting ways that will make it stand out. I've played quite a few games that have gorgeous animations, some really cool sound effects, and well-balanced combat that make this default combat fun and satisfying. Spend time testing and balancing your fights, checking as many areas as possible responsible for bugs and making things your own. Like I said above, use the default battle system all you want, but use it in your own unique way. Make everything about your game your own. Maybe not in a grand way, but in some way that's different. In most indie games there's a hook, some unique idea to grab a player's attention. Focus on finding that hook for your game and amplifying it as much as you can. Make your entire game around this hook, because this hook is your own. Nobody else has done it, and therefore your game will stand out with it. Your thoughts and ideas for this game are unique, so present them in a way that is unique as well. Just because you want to make a sprawling JRPG in a massive open world doesn't mean you have to make it exactly like all of these games. Just because you're using RPGMaker doesn't mean you get to stop being creative. Sure, the engine is easy to make games with, but it sure as heck isn't easy to make good games with.
Hey, it's Steele here again. Let's talk about effort. So it all comes down to this question. Would you buy your own game? People put their games online for others, but then complain that someone else charges $5 for their game. So put yourself in that other person's shoes. Would you spend $5 on your game, or would you complain to your friends that the dev is charging too much? If you can't look yourself in the mirror and truly believe that you would spend the price you're asking for on your game in its current state, then it's not ready to be sold.
Really, in the end, my best advice for getting your game out there commercially is to just have fun making it. Enjoying the process will, in turn, make the game much more fun for the player experiencing it. You have fun, we have fun, everybody wins in the end. Also, make the price of your game whatever you think fits the amount of effort you put in. Nobody else can tell you how to price your hard work, but make sure you don't undervalue yourself.
Hello everyone, this is Steele from Studio Blue. I want to add a few more things to what Toasty's been saying. When creating an RPGMaker game for commercial release, focus on something that makes your game unique among all others out there. Think about it like this. Even if your game has the most streamlined stories, the most compelling characters, the flashiest graphics, the catchiest soundtrack, it won't gain any traction if it's a plotline that others have seen before. Prince is going to save their countries, valiant heroes taking on the Dark One, and the rise of a protagonist from rags to riches. It's been done already. It's been done to death. Do something else. It's not easy to hear that, I know, but as Toasty pointed out, RPGMaker games have to overcome an already negative reputation. Every little thing that you can do to set your game apart will be in its favor. Try taking a story and turning it on its head. Try starting in a place or with a character that no one has done before. If you really want to tell the story of your two brothers destined to fight on opposite sides of a war, or how a princess in disguise finds true love, do something else first. Garner a reputation as a developer who makes interesting, engaging, and unique games. Then do something people may have seen before, because people will already know that you can deliver. Steele out. Peace.
Best of luck with your games, my croutons. I know you can do it. Until next time, goodbye.